My name is Madison Blake. I'm 25 years old. And last spring, I was lying on the cold basement floor, ribs screaming, breath stolen, blood metallic in my mouth. Above me, my sister stood with her hand still frozen midair, as if savoring the moment. My father thundered down the stairs and shouted, "What the hell happened here?" But he wasn't looking at me. He looked straight at her. She fell. Sam said coolly. Laundry basket slipped. She's clumsy. You know how she is. I tried to speak, to say what really happened, but the words crumbled in my throat. And right there on that basement floor, I realized something. They were never going to protect me. But this time, they forgot one thing. The X-rays don't lie. I'm a second-year medical resident at Yale New Haven Hospital. Yes, the big one near downtown. Long nights. Trauma units. Research papers. I've treated strangers with care and precision, but I never thought I'd be the one wheeled into the ER on a stretcher. I still live at home. Not ideal, but med school debt is a monster. And residency barely pays rent. My parents are conservative, image-obsessed New Englanders. Suburban pride and tight smiles. Then there's Sam, my older sister by 2 years. The golden child. And in case it wasn't obvious, we don't get along. She failed out of 3 colleges, floated through temp jobs, and somehow still got treated like royalty. Meanwhile, I was the one bringing in certifications and honors, but still being told I should smile more or be nicer to your sister. There's more to this story than just a staircase and a broken rib. There's years of silence, suppressed bruises, and a system I was trapped inside until one woman saw the truth and chose to listen. Before I walk you through how I turned years of silence into one moment of justice, take a second. Comment if you've ever been the black sheep. Like if you've ever been gaslit by the people who were supposed to love you. And subscribe if you believe the truth always finds a way. Because trust me, this story, it's only just beginning. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the house I grew up in. To the walls that heard every argument. To the family that taught me how to stay small. And to the sister who learned she could do anything and never be blamed. Growing up in the Blake household taught me a few core rules. Keep your voice down. Don't question your sister. And for God's sake, don't ruin the family image. On the outside, we looked perfect. My dad, Charles, was a retired high school principal, wore golf polos even in winter, told stories about back in my day and donated to the school board even after stepping down. Mom, Linda, was the picture of a suburban matriarch, potluck planner, church greeter. She called her wine therapy and smiled through clenched teeth when things weren't going her way. Then there was Sam, my sister, my parents' sun and stars, 2 years older than me and treated like she walked on water. Blonde highlights, loud laugh, fake deep quotes on Instagram. Everyone thought she was this free spirit who just hadn't found her calling yet. In reality, she was a manipulator with a short fuse and a long history of getting away with everything. Sam didn't do consequences. If she failed a class, it was the professor's fault. If she lost a job, the manager was jealous of her confidence. And if something went missing in the house, somehow it was my fault. I'll never forget the time I got grounded for hiding her car keys when she'd actually left them at the gym. Or when she accused me of stealing $40 from Mom's purse. Turned out, she used it to buy vape pods and a fake eyelash kit. But by the time they figured it out, the damage was done. My parents didn't apologize. They just moved on. That was always the pattern. Sam would explode, lie, and cry on cue. And I'd be told to be the bigger person. Let it go. And stop making things harder than they need to be. You'd think living under the same roof would make that kind of favoritism unbearable. And you'd be right. But I stayed. Because med school nearly destroyed me financially. And Yale New Haven was close. Living at home made sense on paper. What I didn't calculate was the emotional cost of swallowing my dignity every day just to save on rent. My room was the same one I'd had since I was 12. Twin bed. Desk with chipped paint. A stack of anatomy books by the window. The only thing I'd updated was the lock on the door, which, to be honest, was mostly symbolic. Sam knew how to pick it. She'd done it before, usually when she was looking for cash. She had a habit of coming in when I wasn't home, borrowing my clothes, rifling through drawers. Once, she took my student loan refund card and spent $200 on a healing retreat that turned out to be a bottomless mimosa brunch in Brooklyn. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face and said, "Relax. Maddie, you're always so intense. It's not that deep." When I told our parents, "Same script. It's a misunderstanding. Don't be dramatic. Maybe you left the card out." That last one was my dad's favorite. He had this talent for turning my anger into a character flaw. "Madison," he said once at dinner, "you need to learn to pick your battles. Family first. Always." Funny how family first never seemed to apply to Sam. The week before everything happened, I just finished a 27-hour shift. Trauma rotation, nonstop cases, blood, screams, paperwork, the whole 9 yards. I came home, collapsed on my bed, fully dressed, and woke up the next morning to find $80 missing from my wallet. I didn't have to guess. I already knew. Sam had been visiting that week. Translation: she broke up with another guy, needed a soft place to land, and came crawling home with excuses and laundry. She always did that, drifted back in when her world fell apart, made herself the center of attention, and somehow pushed me further into the background, like clockwork. When I brought it up at breakfast, she just smirked over her avocado toast. "I don't need your stupid money," she said. "And maybe don't leave your wallet in the open if you're so paranoid." My mom barely looked up from her coffee. "Girls," she sighed, "it's too early for fighting. Can't we just enjoy one morning together?" I stared at her, my mouth half open. That was it. That's all she had to say. I left the table, heart pounding, eyes burning. I knew I wasn't overreacting. I knew gaslighting when I saw it. I just didn't expect it from the people who raised me. And still, part of me held on to hope that maybe one day they'd see the difference between us, that they'd understand the years of quiet cruelty, the bruises I covered, the way I shrank every time Sam entered a room. But that morning was the final warning, the one I ignored. And ignoring it is what landed me at the bottom of the stairs. I should have changed the locks again. I should have said no when Sam asked to borrow the laundry room. Instead, I went downstairs, saw her slipping cash from my wallet again. And that's when everything spiraled. I'd barely slept the night before it happened. Too many things running through my head. A trauma patient coded right in front of me. I still hadn't submitted my final rotation evaluations. Rent was due on my student loan. And Sam had been floating around the house like she owned the place. She'd been there for 5 days, which meant 5 days of passive-aggressive comments, backhanded compliments, and using up every towel in the bathroom like it was a hotel. I kept telling myself, just a few more weeks. Finish this rotation. Save enough. Move out. You can make it. I had no idea what was waiting downstairs. It was a Sunday morning. Quiet. Overcast. The kind of day that felt like it might give you a break. I walked into the kitchen and noticed my wallet sitting just slightly off from where I'd left it the night before. Open. I froze. Then I checked. $40 missing. I don't know what snapped in me exactly. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was being dismissed too many times. Or maybe I just couldn't handle another lie to my face. I heard footsteps downstairs. The laundry room. I grabbed my phone, shoved it in my back pocket, and went down into the basement. And there she was, Samantha Blake, standing next to the dryer. My cash in her hand. No attempt to hide it. No guilt. Just smug indifference. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "Relax," she said. I was going to put it back. "That's not how stealing works." "Sam." She rolled her eyes, then turned to fold a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. "You make such a big deal out of everything," she muttered. "You always act like you're better than everyone just because you wear scrubs and stay up all night pretending to save lives." I stepped closer. My voice shook, but I kept it low. "You've been stealing from me since high school, and Mom and Dad let you get away with it every time. But I'm not doing this anymore. You need to leave." Sam looked up. Her expression changed in an instant. That look entitled, sharp, unblinking. "Or what?" she said. "You gonna cry to Daddy again? Go ahead. They don't believe you. They never have." I opened my mouth to respond, but I didn't get the chance. She stepped forward faster than I expected and shoved me with both hands. The stairwell was right behind me. I felt the edge of the step hit my heel. My body tilted backward. I reached for the railing, but my hand missed. The next moment was a blur of movement and white-hot pain. The stairs rushed up. My back slammed the edge. Then my ribs. Then my head. I landed hard, flat on my side. Everything stopped, and then everything hurt. A dull ringing filled my ears. My chest screamed when I tried to breathe. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Footsteps approached. Sam stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, her face blank. "You fell," she called down. "You're always so clumsy." I couldn't speak. I could barely think. But I remember the part that hurt most wasn't the physical pain. It was hearing her voice so casual, so rehearsed, knowing she knew exactly what she'd done and still didn't care. Seconds later, I heard our father's voice from upstairs. "What was that noise?" Sam didn't hesitate. She fell down the stairs. "She's fine." I heard him curse and start down. Mom followed. They stopped when they saw me crumpled on the floor. "What the hell happened?" my dad asked again. "She slipped," Sam said, feigning concern now. "I told her not to carry so much stuff. She didn't listen." I tried to speak. I forced air into my lungs, but even one breath felt like knives. I croaked. She pushed. "Enough," Dad barked. "We don't need your dramatic accusations right now." Dramatic. I couldn't breathe, and they called me dramatic. My mom knelt down beside me, touched my shoulder. Her face actually looked worried this time. "Charles, we need to take her to the hospital," she said. But my dad shook his head. "No hospitals. We can handle this at home. Like we always do." Like we always do. That phrase rang in my ears. I'd heard it my whole life. When Sam slammed my hand in a door accident. When she threw a book at my face. Misunderstanding. When she locked me out of the house for hours in the snow, family spat. And now I was broken. Lying at the bottom of a staircase. Still expected to smile for the family Christmas card next week. My mom's voice trembled. "She's not breathing right. Look at her chest." Finally, Dad relented. "Fine," he snapped. "But she knows what to say." She fell. "She's clumsy." That's the story. I looked past them. Sam stood there, arms folded, smirking like she always did when she got away with something. That smirk was the last thing I saw before everything faded out. I woke up in the ER. Lights too bright. Ribs burning. I told them I fell, just like I was told to. But the doctor, she didn't look away. She looked right at me, and she said the words that changed everything. "Why don't you tell me what really happened?" The fluorescent lights above me buzzed softly as I blinked into consciousness. I was in a hospital bed. A warm blanket covered me, but it did nothing to dull the throbbing in my ribs. My head ached. My throat was dry, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't surrounded by family, just a nurse adjusting something on the monitor beside me. Her voice was calm. "You're at Yale New Haven. ER? You've got some broken ribs and a fracture in your left wrist. We gave you something for the pain." I nodded slowly, every movement sending lightning down my side. Moments later, a woman in a white coat stepped in. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp but kind. She introduced herself as Dr. Alana Rivers, trauma physician. She didn't smile when she asked, "What happened?" "Madison." I didn't hesitate. I fell. On the basement stairs. The lie slipped out with practiced ease. I'd been saying it since I was 12. Whenever something happened, whenever Sam crossed the line, that was the story. Madison fell. Madison's clumsy. But Dr. Rivers didn't nod and move on. She narrowed her eyes, glanced at the monitor, then at my bruises. "Do you mind if we speak alone?" she asked. My dad, who I hadn't even noticed hovering behind her, stepped forward. "That's not necessary. She's just tired. We've already told you. It's hospital policy." Dr. Rivers cut in, her voice firm. "For trauma cases, please wait outside." He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her tone stopped him. When he left, the silence in the room felt heavy. Dr. Rivers pulled up a stool, sat beside me, and gently said, "Now? Want to tell me what really happened?" I stared at the ceiling. My heart pounded. Every instinct screamed, "Don't say it. Don't ruin everything. Don't make it worse." But she didn't rush me. She didn't press. "I told you. I fell," I whispered. "Madison," she said softly. "I've been in this job for 15 years. I know what a fall looks like. You have grip-shaped bruises on both arms. You got defensive injuries. And the x-rays, they're telling a different story." I looked away, blinking hard. "I can't," I said. "You don't understand. My family has been covering up abuse," she finished. "For years, based on your scans." She pointed at the tablet in her hand. "You've got multiple old fractures in different stages of healing. Rib, wrist, even a microfracture in your clavicle. None of those came from one fall." Tears welled in my eyes. Not from pain, not even from shame. From relief. Someone saw it. Someone saw me. "I didn't want to believe it was abuse," I said quietly. "I thought, if I could just keep the peace long enough, I'd be able to leave and forget all of it." Dr. Rivers didn't look surprised. "That's how a lot of people survive," she said. "You minimize. You cope. But Madison, minimizing doesn't make it stop. It makes it worse. And it's not your fault." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, and the tears spilled over. She stood and placed a hand gently on my arm. "I'm going to make some calls," she said. "We have specialists for this. A trauma counselor, a forensic analyst, and security. Your family can't remove you from this hospital against medical advice. You're safe here." I watched her leave the room, her voice already rising as she spoke to someone outside. Then came the shouting. My father, demanding answers. My mother, pleading quietly. And Sam, loudly insisting I was confused and making drama again. But I didn't feel afraid anymore. I felt still. Present. Grounded. It was like I'd been underwater for years, and someone had finally pulled me up. Later that evening, Dr. Rivers returned this time with another physician. Dr. Brian Caldwell, a forensic trauma specialist. He looked over my scans, then sat beside me and explained every injury with clinical precision. These breaks in the 4th and 5th ribs, he said, pointing to the screen. They're typical of someone being shoved forcefully, not a slip. And this wrist fracture, it's defensive. You likely put your arm out to stop your fall or to block a hit. I nodded. He clicked to the next image. These older injuries, hairline fractures, shallow bruising over the shoulder blade. These are consistent with repeated blunt trauma, spread over years. My stomach turned. You're a medical resident, he said, looking at me. You know what this means. I did. And that's what made it worse. I'd ignored the signs in myself that I would have caught in anyone else, because it was easier to accept pain than confrontation. Easier to explain it away than risk being disbelieved. But now, the evidence was undeniable. I'm filing a formal report. Dr. Rivers said, You don't need to do anything today, but we're bringing in a caseworker. And if you want to pursue legal action, we'll support you every step. I looked at her, then at Dr. Caldwell, and for the first time in my life, I believed someone was on my side. They wanted me to stay silent. They wanted me to disappear into shame. But instead, I started writing, documenting, preparing. And when I finally spoke up, I made sure the truth echoed louder than their lies. There was no dramatic declaration, no screaming breakdown, just silence. And in that silence, I got to work. The hospital gave me a private room in the trauma unit. Guarded. My phone was taken for evidence, then returned. The moment I had it back, I started documenting everything. Every injury, every memory, every moment I'd brushed off because I was too scared to name it. I still couldn't sleep more than an hour at a time. The pain meds helped my ribs, but nothing touched the knot in my stomach. Not because I was afraid of what would happen next, because I knew exactly what they'd do. My family, they were predictable. And when people think their version of reality is the only one that matters, they get careless. Sure enough, it started with a message from my mom. Linda Blake, we're worried. Please call when you're ready to come home. We can move past this. Past this? Like it was some awkward dinner conversation. Like a broken rib and a bruised lung were just a hiccup in family bonding. Then came the voicemails from my dad. Long-winded rants about airing private matters, ruining Sam's future, and how disappointed he was that I'd let strangers manipulate me. They were never worried about me. They were worried about control. And for once, they didn't have it. Dr. Rivers connected me with a caseworker named Leah Moore, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd walked through hell and refused to leave anyone behind. She was the first person who asked, without flinching, "Do you want to press charges?" And I did. But not just against Sam. What I wanted was bigger than one arrest. I wanted accountability, exposure, and most of all, I wanted truth. Because for years, I had been buried under their version of the story. Now it was time for mine. I started with the hospital report, the medical imaging, the fracture timelines, the bruises documented by ER staff. Every piece of it was legally obtained, signed off, and admissible. Then came the phone records. I printed every text from Sam that sounded off, every thinly veiled threat, every guilt trip, every lie she'd sent me as she cleaned out my wallet or borrowed my car without asking. Next were the photos. I had them old ones I'd taken in secret, with timestamps. A bruised shoulder from when Sam shoved me into a wall. A swollen lip I blamed on tripping. A selfie where I was clearly crying behind a fake smile because Mom said, "Just one picture for Facebook." Then, with Leah's help, I drafted a formal statement. We submitted everything to the police and opened an investigation not just into Sam's assault, but into a potential pattern of long-term neglect and emotional abuse from my parents. Because by law, emotional abuse and failure to report known physical abuse are prosecutable in my state, especially when minors were involved at the time. Leah also filed a protective order that barred my family from contacting me directly. Any communication had to go through her legal team. That didn't stop them from trying. Of course, Sam posted vague Instagram stories about toxic liars and jealous little sisters. My dad emailed my supervisor at the hospital with some passive-aggressive nonsense about how family drama was interfering with Madison's focus. Too late. The hospital already knew, and they were on my side. Dr. Rivers had spoken directly to the residency director. I wasn't just protected, I was believed. For the first time, I had a network of people who saw through the Blake family mask. And I wasn't about to waste that. What hit Sam the hardest, though, wasn't the investigation. It wasn't the potential jail time. It was losing her spotlight. I shared my story anonymously through a survivors platform run by a medical trauma network. No names. No faces. Just my truth. My timeline. Within a week, thousands of people read it. Hundreds commented. They told me they saw themselves in my words. That they'd been gaslit, silenced, bruised in private, and told to smile in public. And suddenly, Sam wasn't the center of the narrative anymore. I was not the weak one, not the dramatic one, the survivor, the one who finally said, "Enough." Then came the hearing. Sam was officially charged with assault resulting in bodily harm, and my parents were issued a formal citation for interference and negligence in a domestic violence investigation. The court granted me a temporary restraining order, then extended it to 1 year after the evidence was reviewed. Sam cried in court, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, said I threw myself backward, but there were witnesses now. Doctors, reports, images. You can only lie your way through so much before the truth starts screaming louder. After the ruling, I walked out of the courthouse into the cold Connecticut air. Leah met me on the steps and handed me a folder. "Here's everything you asked for," she said. "Police reports, court documents, full copies." I held it in both hands. It felt heavier than it looked. Not because of the paper, because of what it meant. Proof? Closure? A record that couldn't be rewritten or brushed aside. They told me speaking up would destroy everything. But the only thing I destroyed was the lie they'd been living in for years. It didn't all change overnight. There was no single moment where everything magically healed. But the silence, that suffocating silence I'd lived in for years, it was gone. And in its place was something else. Something heavier, but cleaner. Truth? After the hearing, I moved out. Not just from the house, but from that entire version of my life. A friend from the hospital let me rent her guest apartment short-term. It wasn't fancy, just a studio above a garage, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my space, my rules. I'd never slept so deeply in my life. No footsteps pacing the hallway. No slammed doors. No pretending to be invisible in my own home. The first night there, I cried. Not from sadness, from relief. Real freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in small moments, like waking up and realizing no one's going to guilt trip you before breakfast. As for my family, they didn't take the loss quietly. Sam deactivated her main social media accounts. Her influencer presence tanked after the story leaked to a local forum. People started connecting the dots. Former classmates, ex-boyfriends, even one of her past roommates reached out to me privately and said, "I always knew there was something off. I just didn't know how deep it went." My parents tried damage control. They told extended family it was a legal misunderstanding, that Madison exaggerated things during a stressful time. But they weren't prepared for the fact that I wasn't the only one who knew. By now, the hospital had issued a formal internal report detailing the steps they took to protect a staff member from confirmed domestic abuse. That document wasn't public, but it was enough to prevent my father from pushing his version of the story too far. His credibility took a hit when a local journalist, someone who'd followed my anonymous story online, contacted the hospital's PR office. They declined to comment, but it sent a message. This wasn't going to disappear, and neither was I. At work, things shifted too. For the first time, my mentors treated me not just as a resident, but as a survivor who fought to protect her own truth. Dr. Rivers continued to check in, casually but consistently. My supervisor gave me flexibility during the investigation, and when I returned to full hours, I did it with my head high. Even the nurses started calling me bulletproof. It wasn't admiration. Exactly. It was respect. They knew what I'd walked through, and that I hadn't let it define me. A few weeks later, I ran into Sam, by accident, at a grocery store in town. She didn't see me at first, just stood in the cereal aisle, phone in one hand, cart half filled with junk food. She looked tired, heavier, somehow, like the weight of being seen for who she truly was had finally settled on her shoulders. I turned to leave. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need another fight. But she looked up, froze, then followed me toward the exit. "You happy now?" she hissed under her breath. "You ruined my life." I stopped walking, turned around slowly. "No," I said calmly. "You ruined mine. I just stopped covering for you." She blinked, swallowed hard. For once, she didn't have a comeback, and I walked away, not out of victory, but because I had nothing left to prove. Later that night, I told Leah about it over the phone. She listened, then asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about it. About the trial, the shame, the nights I woke up gasping. About my mom's voicemail 2 days after the restraining order, the one where she begged me to reconsider, for the sake of the family. About how, even now, part of me still wanted her to apologize. To say, "I'm sorry we didn't believe you." But that apology never came. And I realized something. I didn't need it anymore. No, I told Leah, I don't regret it. Not a single step. Because the truth isn't always easy. But it's always worth it. A few weeks after that, I received a handwritten letter. No return address. It was from one of my old classmates, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She wrote, "I read your story online. I knew you were smart, but I didn't know you were brave too. I'm leaving a situation that looks a lot like what you described. Because you showed me I could..." I read that line 3 times. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about me anymore. My story had become someone else's permission slip, a crack in someone else's cage. I never set out to become a symbol. But maybe, sometimes, surviving out loud is the most powerful thing you can do. I used to think being strong meant staying quiet. Not crying. Not complaining. Not making waves. For years, I believed that if I could just endure the chaos, if I kept my head down long enough, things would eventually get better on their own. But they didn't. Because silence doesn't fix abuse. It feeds it. And when the people who are supposed to love you use your silence to hurt you, that's not a family. That's a performance. It took me 25 years to break the pattern. 25 years to stop minimizing pain that wasn't mine to carry. It started with a fall. It ended with a choice. Since going public with my story anonymously at first, and later with my name, I've been flooded with messages. Not just from survivors, but from people who saw themselves in the margins of my experience. Some said, "Your sister reminds me of mine." Others said, "Your parents reacted just like mine did." A few simply wrote, "Thank you. I thought I was the only one." And that's the thing about abuse that happens behind closed doors. It convinces you you're alone, that no one would believe you, that your pain is too complicated to explain. But you're not. You're not too sensitive. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're just someone who's finally refusing to carry a weight that was never yours to begin with. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the people who demand your silence are the ones most afraid of your truth. My family taught me how to survive in a system where appearances mattered more than people. But surviving isn't the same as living. Living means setting boundaries. It means choosing honesty, even when your voice shakes. It means realizing you don't have to earn love through obedience. I still get angry sometimes. Still flinch at sudden loud noises. Still catch myself apologizing out of habit. Healing isn't linear. It's layered. But every day I speak the truth, even in small ways, is a day I take my life back. I've since joined a peer advocacy group at the hospital. We support other medical staff navigating domestic abuse, something most people don't talk about because we're supposed to be the strong ones. I've met nurses who sleep in their cars between shifts to avoid going home. EMTs whose partners control every dollar. Residents who thought no one would take them seriously because of their title. Now we meet monthly. We talk. We listen. We write down names and resources. And no one has to explain why they stayed. Because we already know. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't fallen that day. If I hadn't landed just wrong enough to break my ribs. If Dr. Rivers hadn't asked the right questions. If I'd kept swallowing every truth just to keep the peace. Would I still be in that house? Still being told to let it go. Still believing that loyalty meant silence. I don't know. But I do know this. Pain doesn't get better by pretending it isn't there. It gets better when it's seen. Heard. Held up to the light. A friend asked me recently, "Would you forgive your family if they apologized?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I knew it too clearly. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back into your life. It's about letting yourself move forward without dragging their weight. So, yes, I forgive them, but I'll never forget who I had to become to survive them. Maybe your story doesn't look like mine. Maybe it's your partner, not your sibling. Your boss, not your parent. Maybe it's subtle, quiet, unseen. But if your gut has been whispering that something's off, believe it. Trust it. And when the time comes to speak, don't let fear stop you. Because someone out there is waiting to hear your story the way I once needed to hear mine. If this story hits something in you, don't scroll past. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment, even a single word like same. Let others know they're not alone. And if you're safe now, say it. Say it loud. Because survival is worth celebrating. 2.